It's ironic to me that my Republican colleague thinks that Chair Grunberg can't do his job because he will be in court when his candidate for president is currently facing multiple indictments and is actually in court. Chair Grunberg, you and I have had a conversation about the FDIC, and as I said to you when we last spoke, I believe that it can be your legacy to repair the damage that has been done to employees at the FDIC, and knowing the agency as you do, you have the potential to make the changes that need to be made in this agency for the good of everybody there and for this agency that I do believe that you care deeply about. And as you have heard, we will all hold you accountable to that. Mr. Barr, I wanted to direct a question to you and really to everybody on the panel. And this is to do with what is happening with home insurance rate surges around the country. So homeowners have seen their insurance rates surge in recent years. And why is this happening? It's happening because of bigger, more destructive, and more frequent severe weather events. And this, of course, is the cost of climate change, and it's hitting homeowners hard. A recent study by LexisNexis found that 97% of catastrophic losses to homeowners in 2022 were caused by hail and wind and weather-related events. Now, so you're probably thinking this is a big problem for states like Florida or Louisiana or South Carolina, and of course it is. It is a huge economic problem, but you may not know that it is a huge issue in the Midwest. From 2016 to 2022, my home state of Minnesota incurred the highest loss cost of any state for severe weather events. And so what does this mean? It means that insurance companies are not keeping up. And the cost of this rolls down to homeowners in the form of massive rate hikes, high costs to pay for improvements on their properties, or worst case, they just lose their property insurance. So my question is, obviously these spiking costs for property and casualty insurance are an issue for homeowners, but it also seems like it could be a big issue for financial institutions who need to manage this risks. Would you agree with that? And just tell me how you see this issue panning out as a systemic risk.
Thank you, Senator. It's an excellent question. We do look carefully at the way in which the largest banks are managing these kinds of risks. We recently went through an exercise with 6 of the largest banks to understand their risk measurement and risk management practices. And one of the things that the banks learned through that process, many of them, is that they did not have complete information about how their properties were covered or were not covered by property and casualty insurance. And that, of course, affects losses to the banking sector. So it is a really, I think, quite critical issue.
The prospect of, trillions of dollars of properties becoming uninsurable because of this risk seems to me to be something of significant concern. And I think it's very important that as regulators, you look at this issue and you think clearly about what that might mean in terms of a systemic risk. I also want to ask you about the Community Reinvestment Act. You know that this is something that I've been paying a lot of attention to. I care a lot about this. I think that the recently finalized updates to the CRA were important and long overdue, and so I'm dismayed, of course, that the rulemaking has been struck down by this activist judge in a case where I think plaintiffs were clearly shopping for a friendly judge. I'm not asking you to comment on that, and I understand with pending litigation you can't comment on that, but I wonder if you could maybe clarify a few things about the rulemaking itself. First, it is true that this was the first update to CRA regulations in about 29 years. Is that right?
That's correct.
And since those old rules, there's been many significant changes in banking, correct? I mean, the big shift to mobile and online banking is just one example.
Yes, Senator.
And these new rules take into account how remote lending works. Is that correct?
Yes, the rule does do that.
And is it also true that these new rules they're not overly inclusive? So, for example, they don't pull in community banks that still largely operate locally.
Well, the particular provision with respect to outside lending areas applies to large banks that don't have large branch bases, so they're doing a lot of remote lending.
Right. Thank you. I think that it is just important that we understand that a very thoughtful, in my view, and tailored approach has been taken with these CRA rules that reflects the realities of banking today, and I hope that they will be allowed to go into effect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Smith. Senator Haggerty of Tennessee is recognized.